Joe. Thank you. Got it? Thank you, Katie Joe, for that beautiful music. Welcome to all former students of Michael Lyons, and we're all former students in one way or another. The classroom is a fitting place to pay tribute to an all-time great teacher. In honor of Mike, the Political Science Department is resurrecting an old class number today, Poli-Sci 101. But we are changing the title. What we all learned from Professor Lyons, or should have. And you should pay attention because there will be an exam. So thank all of you for being here in the classroom or on Zoom today. My name is Steve Sharp. I've had the privilege of knowing Mike for nearly half a century. Starting out as a student in 1978, then later working alongside him for a quarter of a century, and then finally, for the past 2 years, we shared an office in Mike's so-called retirement. I took his famous congressional simulation when he first taught it. You'll hear that class mentioned a lot today, I'm sure. And I finished out for the course for him this semester. The last time it was taught, and the last time it will ever be taught the way Mike taught it. The last piece of legislation the students in his class passed this semester was to award Mike the Congressional Medal of Honor. So, today we are here to celebrate the legacy of a truly remarkable teacher, a friend, a really good human being who touched people for decades everywhere, often in ways that you wouldn't expect from a mere professor. Now, everyone who's met Mike has a story to tell about him, it seems, and unfortunately, we can't hear them all today. As outlined in the program, we will hear from Mike's 2 daughters, a few colleagues, former students, and friend. Zoom participants can find the program in the comments. We'll ask each of them to introduce themselves when they come up. However, after class today, we'll adjourn to the Haight Alumni House across the street to eat and drink and share all those other stories about Mike. We'll start with his favorite younger daughter, Emily. His favorite older daughter, Carolyn, will speak later. Emily?
I look so short. That's fine. Thank you, Steve. All right. I am Emily. I asked Steve to introduce me as Mike's favorite daughter. Thank you, Steve. I am also his youngest daughter, both in birth order and in any stereotype you can imagine. And that said, I would like to take this opportunity to thank my older sister, Carolyn, his older favorite daughter, for CEOing this memorial beautifully. Dad would have been very proud. Growing up, I felt different and sometimes unseen by my dad. That in part is due to his obtuseness, which I'm sure some of you observed. A recent example is from a movie night we had in March, where he showed me a favorite of his from growing up, From Russia with Love. I walked into the living room with a Korean collagen mask. Here's a photo if you've never seen one. As a side note, I wanted to use slides in this speech in the same way that my dad did in his lectures, as a visual aid to help articulate a point. However, after seeing my 2 slides, on this one Carolyn asked, "Did you mean to have this photo of a mask?" None of which feature my dad, the 2 slides, weird, bizarre photos, compared with Carolyn's forthcoming gorgeous photo collage. I'm just slightly embarrassed. Anyway, you may remember what it was like to see these masks for the first time when they became popular 8-ish years ago. Somewhat creepy and alarming. Despite this, my dad proceeded through the movie night without comment, as if there was nothing different on my face. This interaction gave me an insight. It's not that he didn't notice his daughter had come to movie night dressed up as a Korean horror character, but instead that it was irrelevant. Similar to how I imagine my dog, Grizz, doesn't seem startled when he saw me, or didn't seem startled when he saw me, just a friendly soul. And that is the most true thing about ML. His focus on what was important and true, his focus was on what was important and true, and the rest bounced off of him without note or judgment. This was true in his personal life and in his work as a political scientist. Throughout my life, I'd bring him a problem statement about society or my personal life. He would listen intently, even if he didn't waste energy doing the usual things humans do to show you that they're listening, and then provide a distilled, insightful answer based on data from his lived experience or from his political science literature. Of course, peer-reviewed and empirical. He waded through daily. And by the way, if any of you take issue with the phrasing peer-reviewed and empirical, please take it up with Josh Ryan, who helped me with that sentence at the reception. Now an example. I moved home to Logan last November after several tumultuous life transitions, including a job loss and a breakup. In the absence of insurance, my dad acted as my therapist. He had more selective interest in my personal life than my typical therapists, but his deep understanding of me and the insights and guidance he provided were unmatched. One subject he remained seemingly uninterested in was my birthday plan. My birthday is December 22nd, same as Mike's dad, Harry, and Linda and Lois and Amy, who are here, hello. And most years I love to celebrate. As Carolyn will speak to later, birthdays and Christmas celebrations are big in our family. This year I was feeling like a loser and somewhat defeated, but I made a decision to be my own best friend, inspired by Beyonce's Homecoming, and planned myself the dream birthday party. The theme was inspired by an ornament my best friend growing up, Tess, and she's watching on Zoom, hi Tess, and her family's here, hello, gave me the previous year, Merry Grizmas, a celebration of my favorite creature, my poodle schnauzer, Grizzly. I ordered decorations, a cake topper, and Grizmas goodies for my friends. And second slide. Thanks. In the instances where I believed I could inspire curiosity in my dad, I would sometimes approach him as if I was giving a lecture into my interpersonal journey and hoped something would pique his interest, but without any expectations. I downloaded him on my Beyonce-inspired journey in early December and kept him apprised of all my Grizmas developments. In response, I imagined he would say, well, very good, and switch the subject. On December 22nd, I was leaving his house, where I've had the pleasure of living and hanging out with him for the last several months, to Salt Lake City for my party. My car was packed to the brim with balloons, Grizzly, my friend Gaia, featured here, and all things Merry Grizmas. He pulled a classic ML move and stopped my vehicle as I was pulling out of the driveway to leave. I rolled down my window and he told me he was so proud of how I was approaching this difficult birthday, and that because I approached hard situations with this type of positivity, and he would never say anything this corny, but as a nod to Beyonce, ability to make lemonade out of lemons, He knew that I was going to come out of this hard time of my life and be okay and eventually thrive. If I was a different type of person, I would sit at home and feel sad for myself, but this resolution in character said everything about how my life was going to turn out. I remember how my life was going to turn out specifically. It was a perfect soul-filling distillation of the data he had quietly gathered over the last few months and words that I've gone back to through this grieving process. Grief has been different than I could have imagined and has connected me to joy, spirituality, and most heartening, immense gratitude for everything he was and everything he gave me. So much of my identity was formed in connection with and trying to impress my dad. Skiing, tennis, a love of nature, travel, cooking, debating, joking, and being fully present and focused on what's essential. What I adored most about my dad above all of these gifts was his unique movement through the world. I find him endlessly amusing and funny. From a young age, have been perfecting my impressions of him and guessing the surprisingly delightful and odd ways he would say something. I would put him on speaker with my friends and guess what he'd say before calling, how his voicemails would go, and what he'd say upon meeting somebody new. He met my friend Liz last month, and I predicted to a T his opening line. Well, oh God, I have to channel him. He'd be like, okay. His hands would be folded like this, and we were in the backyard. And he would say, well, Liz, very nice to meet you. Would you like a beverage? We have fresh squeezed orange juice, water, Diet Coke, cranberry juice, wine, and beer. Oh, and milk. That's the one I forgot to add. I'm like, who would ask for a glass of milk? That's crazy. And then I laughed at him, and he's like, well, it's nice to offer guests a beverage. I'm like, true. I'm going to keep my impressions of him sharp, and thank God I have a bounty of voicemails, voice notes, and videos to pull from if he ever feels far away. As a young person, the differences between us felt more significant and substantial than the similarities. But as I've matured, learned about myself, and gained confidence, I've grown to believe the essential truths he has been preaching about me since I can remember. For example, that I am an Olympic-level tennis player and skier, and could have easily been a Broadway star had I pursued that path after college. It's also become clear to those that know us best that we're largely the same person if you take away the things that don't really matter and just focus on the distilled soul my dad and Grizzly see when they look at me. Here's one minor example that I love to close. Due to lack of attention to detail and poor spatial reasoning, when I park in a parking spot, I tend to pull only halfway in. Even if I think, don't do that thing, as I'm pulling in, it happens 40-ish% of the time. I forgot to take a photo to demonstrate this, and neither the internet nor ChatGPT could conjure an image of this to show you, which makes this next line feel all the more true. I've never noticed anyone else doing this and have been a bit baffled by the whole thing. A few months ago, my dad met me at a T-Mobile to facilitate getting on his family plan. I met him outside and noticed his classically Aggie blue Outback, featuring an Aggie license plate, was only pulled in halfway to the spot. And shout out to the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, noticed several instances of this over the last few months. I feel like such an extension of him. I'm going to miss him indefinitely, and I'm also grateful for the 35 years of learning, observing, laughing, and impersonating him. I appreciate you all being here and know that your presence in my dad's life was important and meaningful and filled his days with so much happiness. I look forward to getting to meet or catch up with as many of you as possible during the reception, and if you have an ML impression, I would love to see it. My dad's close friend, Josh Ryan, and mine at this point too, I'd like to thank, or as I recently learned from a sociology professor I play tennis with, Hot Josh is up next.
Thank you, Emily. As Emily said, my name is Josh Ryan. I'm a professor in the political science program. Thank you, Steve. Is that okay? Okay. 2014, I flew to Salt Lake City to interview for a job at Utah State. Michael was approximately an hour late picking me up from the airport. On the drive to Logan, he stopped at a gas station so he could buy a soda. In Brigham City, he pointed at the USU building and said, "We're here." That was a favorite joke of his. After my first year at USU, I spent the summer trying to teach myself to fly fish. I did not catch a single thing. When school started in the fall, Michael would come into the office and would claim that he caught 10 or 15 fish the evening before. I thought he was either exaggerating or potentially just outright lying. I'd never heard of somebody catching that many fish in one day, and I couldn't believe it. So the following summer, we went fishing together. Or I'll say, I enrolled in the Michael Lyons School of Fly Fishing. He taught me his rules. Always wade upstream, move quickly, 2 casts into a hole, and if a fish doesn't come up, keep going. Never carry a net, they're bad luck, pointless anyway. Don't make long looping casts like the kind you see in the movies. Make short, precise casts. Fish until dark. Most importantly, only use dry flies. Michael was appalled years later when I started using nymphs, and he was really horrified when he saw me catch fish with nymphs. When we went fishing, we never talked about work. We mostly talked about fishing. What kinds of flies to use, how the fishing was yesterday, how it was likely to be tomorrow, other places we'd like to fish. At the river, Michael would charge off into the brush. He was unconcerned with the hazards of fly fishing, moose, rattlesnakes, ticks. He would wade aggressively. He was unafraid of going for a swim. Once, on the Logan River, a thunderstorm came up, and I made us get off the water because I was worried we were going to get struck by lightning. Michael brought this incident up for years because he thought the whole thing was very silly. At the end of a day of fishing, Michael would count the fish caught and pronounce it a good day, or not, it happens. We often disagreed on the number of fish because Michael would count a fish as caught, even if it just approached his fly. He said that I didn't count a fish until it was in the frying pan. Sometimes on the drive home, he'd drink a beer. Here is an entry from my fly fishing journal, August 16th, 2017. Curtis Creek with Michael Lyons. Sunny, low 80s. Started at the low end of the meadow, worked up. Good fishing, nice sized fish, 10 fish day. I used purple haze. Michael used an 18-inch brown mayfly and a hopper. Didn't work as well. We fished the Logan River, Blacksmith Fork River, the Cub River, the right-hand fork, left-hand fork, Curtis Creek, Beaver Creek, Rock Creek, and Franklin Basin. But I associate him most with the Blacksmith. We went there a lot. The Blacksmith is a difficult river to fish. It's small and brushy. It can be tricky to wade, but there are a lot of fish to catch if you know what you're doing. And Michael knew what he was doing. Sometime last August or September, Michael and I went fishing together for the last time. I don't remember it because I didn't know it would be the last time. I hope it was a good day. We did have some good days last year. Michael had a little more difficulty getting up and down the riverbank. He didn't wade out as far as he used to, but he could still cast, which meant he could still catch a lot of fish. In about a month from now, once the runoff is over, I'll go to the Blacksmith alone, and I'll catch a brown trout on a dry fly. I'll picture Michael in the last side of the canyon, just before dark, wading upstream, making his short, precise casts. Then I'll remember him saying something like, well, 15 fish between us. That's a pretty good day. He was a great teacher, and he taught me to do something I love. Thank you, Michael.
I have a friend who I often turn to for advice when preparing to address an audience where the stakes feel high and I want to make sure I get everything just right. And I can always count on this friend to help me navigate even difficult topics in challenging moments. The fact that reason catches up with instinct, such as the instinct I had to reach out to this friend for a little advice before speaking today, was the moment where reason reminded me that that friend is Michael Lyons, and I don't get that extra lift today. Like so many of us in political science, across campus there's a natural impulse to stop by Mike's office get his take on an event, or simply enjoy a conversation. Today, I hope that in sharing a few thoughts, I can offer a fitting tribute to Michael as a scholar and as a colleague. Summarizing the impact of Michael's career in just a few minutes is impossible. The 20-minute version of this speech still didn't do it, and clearly that was not going to work for the constraints of the day. Rather than a clinical approach, I hope it's okay if I just share a couple of stories. Of course, Michael began his academic career as an undergraduate student at UC Santa Barbara, where he declared a major in physics at the beginning. Although his interest shifted to politics and public policy, the scientific mindset as a framework for understanding the world never left him. He believed deeply that rigorous methods of inquiry should be applied to understanding human behavior. In short, he sought to put the science in political science. He ultimately completed bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees at UCSB, studying under noted congressional scholar Roger Davidson. After a brief stint working in Congress, Michael came to USU in an academic job. It did not take long at all for Michael to build a reputation for excellence in teaching. Long before words like experiential learning or simulations entered the pedagogical lexicon of higher education, Michael Lyons was running an extraordinarily successful simulated Congress, or to some of you, SimCon. His approach gave students not only a foundation in legislative politics, but the opportunity to step into the role of a member of Congress. Through careful preparation and attention to the realities of the legislative process, he created an experience that felt real and consequential. As a result, students left his classes with a sense that they could do whatever they needed to be able to do to be successful in careers in public service. Students have left his class with that confidence, and his legacy lives on in the countless students that he's inspired to pursue those paths. Michael was not only a teacher of students, but he was a mentor of faculty. My own experience is a testament to that. My first semester at USU created a bit of a stir, and not in a good way. I remember a quotation of something along the lines of, well, they're not the worst teaching evaluations we've seen in the department. Not exactly a reassuring phrase for a junior faculty member. In spite of that, Michael invited me to guest lecture at a summer workshop he was leading that summer, along with his friend and colleague, Peter Galdarisi. After the first session, he quickly motioned for me to step outside into the hallway, and I started to wonder what I had done. Instead, he pulled me out and he just said, Damon, you're not just going to be fine as a teacher, you'll be excellent. That moment mattered a great deal to me. In the same way that Michael Lyons was a builder of confidence in his students in their capacity to do the things that he believed they could do, he was that figure for me and has been that figure instilling that confidence in junior faculty at USU for the course of his entire career. Early in my time here at USU, I mentioned to Michael an interest in bringing more practical skills into my parties and elections class. His enthusiasm was immediate, and upon further consideration, he suggested that I integrate a campaign simulation into my class, mirroring in some ways the techniques and practices he used in the SimCon class. I was a little intimidated, but after some discussions, felt like we had a concept that might work. I wrote it up, set the syllabus, showed up in class, and, well, beginning about the first day, started having problems and issues. Fortunately, Michael was in the class, in the office across the hall, and his door was always open, and he was always willing to take a moment for a conversation to help a colleague. Michael's influence is profound in the sense that he is willing to take a moment to help anyone who needs a lift with whatever's going on in teaching, and he always has a good, well-thought-through, well-structured idea of how to solve it, because he had been solving those problems in his own teaching for so long. It's not just me that's felt this influence. The the tradition of using simulation to teach and give students an opportunity to learn by doing is woven into the very fabric of the political science department today. Our students engage in simulations across the curriculum: campaigns, Congress, international negotiations, constitutional conventions, Supreme Court simulations, and more. The way students learn at Utah State University is different, and Michael's fingerprints are all over it. Michael brought warmth, humor, and an open door to everyday life in the department. Conversations with him could range from politics to university life to whatever was going on in your world. His insight made him a trusted voice for all kinds of questions. Michael was also known for his quick wit. About a year ago, we gathered to celebrate his formal retirement, which by my count was his second retirement, and after which he, of course, immediately returned to be an adjunct anyways. There were multiple events because we knew the scope of how much Michael influenced others and what he meant to them. As I walked into one of them, he greeted me and he said, "You know, I've seen a lot of faculty come and go in my days here at USU, and I've never seen anyone get this kind of send-off. Should I be offended that everyone is so inclined to celebrate the fact that I'm retiring?" While he was quick with a self-deprecating joke and humble in regards to his own impact, today we see him as the giant that he is. A teacher who transformed how students experience political science, a scholar who insisted on rigor and clarity, a colleague whose influence is simply unmatched, a friend who was sincere and caring, a father and grandfather who truly loved those roles. We in the department see him in the programs we've built, deeply embedded. He's in the classrooms we lead, and he's in the generations of students who carry forth the things they've learned from him. Michael stands out not only for his legendary career, but also what continues to be here because he was here. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Neil Abercrombie, another former student in Graduate Political Science Department, former student of Professor Lyons. First, I just want to say thank you to Professor Lyons' family and the Political Science Department for giving me just an opportunity to say a few things about him. And I'm really up here just to introduce a video that's a montage of his former students. So I'm filibustering just a little bit with my own personal comments, which seems appropriate. But I watched the video. Thank you for a little advanced preview of it. And it was evident to me, and it's been evident over the last few years when I've met so many different alums of the Political Science Department, that my story at Utah State and my subsequent career is not that unique. I came to Utah State as an undergrad, freshman, without a major, not knowing what I wanted to do, and waltzed into a Poli-Sci 101 class and was inspired by Professor Lyons, not only to declare a major in political science, but as some have mentioned, inspired that for the first time I thought I could have a career in politics, which before I thought it was just a hobby. That class, to me, that introduced me to political science, Mike Lyons was synonymous to the Political Science Department. I see so many other faculty here today, and I knew there were other faculty, but for the first few years I was here at Utah State, it was just Mike Lyons and his department. And similarly, my story is not unique in SimCom. The class was truly transformational. It's unique to have a class that you reflect on a year after that semester, or 2 years after, or in our case, 2 or 3 decades after we took that class, and the impact that it had on us. It truly will go down as one of the most impactful courses in the history of Utah State University. And I guess maybe one thing that might be a little bit unique in my story is it was in that class that I learned that my girlfriend and I did not share a lot of the same political views. She is now my wife, and she would say if she were here, we started debating politics in Professor Lyons' class, and we have not stopped, which I guess the advantage we learned how to debate in a way that had respect for each other because we've continued it for 24 years of marriage. During my time at Utah State as well, working here, I got to work with a lot of faculty, some of the best academics in the world, to see faculty that are leading elite academic institutions in their discipline to be pursuing the cutting edge of some of the best research, to be publishing, to be speaking about some of the most complicated issues in the world. And Professor Lyons stands out in all of those instances because he was singularly focused on the classroom and singularly focused on the students. And anybody that knew Professor Lyons knows that that was the case. But as I reflect on Professor Lyons before stepping away and just letting the montage video show, the thing that I will miss the most about Professor Lyons is seeing him nearly every Saturday at the Logan Farmers Market. We never planned or timed our visits to the farmers market at the same time, but probably 90% of the time I went to the farmers market, which was virtually every Saturday in the spring, summer, and fall here in Logan, I would run into Professor Lyons. And he and I would talk for a little bit. He would usually tell me what produce he was buying, what he was going to be cooking that weekend. We'd maybe talk about politics a little bit. Over the years, we shifted to talking more about university politics than politics in Washington, D.C. or in Salt Lake. And sometimes the university politics were higher stakes than what seemed like the halls of Congress were debating. And now thinking about the timing of this memorial for Professor Lyons, the week we're going into commencement, 2 weeks before the start of the Logan Farmers Market. He and I never talked about the connection of the metaphor of teaching and agriculture or produce or planting a seed and watching it grow and celebrating the harvest of it. But that's exactly what he did every year. It's exactly what this next week will be with commencement, the fruits of the labor of the students that have studied here, the beginning of a new chapter. And as hard as it is to say goodbye to our friend Mike Lyons, it feels fitting to do it at a time that we're celebrating the beginning of a new spring and subsequent harvest this fall and the closing of a chapter of a commencement this week. So with all of that, I just want to say thank you to our friend Mike Lyons for inspiring us, for being our friend, and most importantly, for teaching us.
I first met Mike, like so many others, in his intro-level Politics and Government 101 class that so many Aggie freshmen have to take every year. And I was quickly drawn to his passion and the way that he could present these topics and make them sound new and fresh and interesting. But I probably never realized at that point as a 18-year-old what an impact Mike would have on my career trajectory. I took 2 more courses with him, his legislative simulation course, and he was the professor for my capstone. But it wasn't necessarily the in the classroom moments that I remember. It was the many conversations that we had in his office where, you know, we could get into the weeds of policy, and he, you know, was willing to lend his time to discuss these issues with students. Conversations I'm sure that he's had multiple times over the decades with many different students, but he was always willing to kind of help you talk through and understand and, you know, lead you, not necessarily lead you, but help you find the answers that you were looking for, or provide feedback as you were working through your own analyses. Or a student like myself who was a first generation, you know, college student, I oftentimes felt overwhelmed and, you know, underqualified for so many things. And Mike was always one of those professors and mentors that was in my corner. He, you know, let me know when I was on the right path. He was quick to congratulate, to nominate, to, you know, prop up or stand up or help me feel more confident in who I was and in my skills, in my knowledge, in my understanding. And that's what a good, you know, teacher and mentor does. That's what Mike did for so many. I can think of all the conversations that I had with him as a student, but the conversations and the correspondence that we've kept up since. I just went through my email the other day to reread conversations that we had. He was always, you know, encouraging and supportive, and I'm forever grateful for the interest that he took in me. I was, in my, you know, opinion, nobody special, nobody out of the ordinary, but he was willing to, you know, be interested and help me navigate a path to understand, you know, where I could start to influence policy and politic. And I'll always be grateful. I'm sure that he's sorely missed by so many in the campus community, but he's also missed by so many of us in the alumni community for the outsized impact that he had on us in our jobs or careers and our participation in this American democracy and experiment.
Hi, I'm Kayla Woodring, a political science graduate from the class of 2011 and now an OBGYN resident in Phoenix, Arizona. And for that reason, I unfortunately cannot be there in person today. I had a labor and delivery call shift that I simply just could not get out of. And I'm very sad to miss this memorial. I'm grateful that this time about a year ago, I was able to attend Dr. Lyons' retirement party and, get to interact with him in person one last time. Though I'm certainly sad to know now that that was the last time I will have seen him in person. Dr. Lyons was a profoundly important person in my life. He had a huge impact on me becoming the woman that I am today. At the time that I was at Utah State, I was very much trying to figure out sort of who I was and who I wanted to be. And he was always so incredibly supportive and encouraging of me pursuing my dreams and following whatever career path called out to me. And I definitely feel like, even though I kind of ended up in a field that's different than what many of his students ended up in, that a lot of the things that he taught me very much carry on in my daily interaction with my patients. As somebody who chose OBGYN, I definitely feel like advocacy is a huge part of my career, and the things I learned as a political science grad and even sort of the career path I followed not long after that for a while, I've learned skills and things that I use every day, which I think is an important part of Dr. Lyons' legacy that I just want to acknowledge. While he may no longer be here with us today, I definitely feel that his impact is far-reaching through each of us who were touched by him during our years at Utah State. We all very much carry that on in the people we interact with on a daily basis. I know that many of his students ended up choosing careers in government and politics and influence and impact people that way. I definitely feel like I'm able to be a better physician for my patients because I know how to sort of navigate the other side of medicine, which is sort of the public-facing piece of it and the policy networking that goes on the back end. And I've actually been able to do that with ACOG and also the Utah Medical Association at one point, and now here in Arizona, the Arizona Medical Association. So I want to acknowledge that his love for people and teaching echoes out through me and each and every one of us. And again, I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person today, but I'm grateful that I was able to share this video tribute. Rest in peace, Dr. Lyons. I'll pour one out for you next time I have some heirloom tomatoes. I know those were your favorite.
Hi, my name's Isaac Hyam. I graduated from Utah State with degrees in political science in 2010 and 2012. When I first got to Logan, my plan was completely different. I had nothing to do with political science, but my first semester, I took Dr. Lyons' legislative politics class and immediately fell in love. His passion for that class was just so fun. And after that semester, I took as many of his courses as I could, switched my major to political science, pretty much all because of him. Over the years, we grew to get to know each other. I was one of those rowdy front row students at the basketball games, and we bonded over talking about all the new cheers and chants that we were starting up. When I graduated in 2010, the economy was still pretty bad. I was like, oh, what should I do? I can't find a job. Should I go to law school? And Dr. Lyons said, hey, why don't you come and be my TA and do our master's program? And I was like, oh, cool. Get to be in college, go to 2 more years of Aggie games, get a master's degree. So I decided to do that. And over those next 2 years, I got to know him even better, working with him as his TA and getting to see another side of him and his passion and how much he genuinely cared for his students and how much he truly wanted to help them understand, politics in our government and how much that impacted their lives, whether they were majoring in political science or whether they were just taking it as a general ed class. He truly wanted to help them, better understand how this impacted them. I had such a deep respect and appreciation for him. And, in between my first and second year of the master's program, I was having a pretty rough time as one of the only gay out students up at Utah State. And I went to talk to him, and I said, I don't know if I can do this. I feel like I'm suffocating here. I need to get out. And he said, you know what? We want you to bear the Utah State name on your degree, and we will work it out. And so he worked with me to be able to work out a plan where that second year of the program, I was able to do an internship in Salt Lake a couple days a week and be up in Logan doing TA stuff for him a couple days a week. And he didn't have to do that, but he went out of his way to do that for me and basically changed the course of my entire life. And I am forever grateful to him for his willingness to do that for me and for engendering in me this passion for politics and government that has spawned my entire career. So I am deeply grateful to him and everything that he taught me, and will really miss him.
My freshman year at Utah State, I was a pre-med major taking the requisite core biology courses. I was early one day and waiting outside the doors to the classroom, and through the closed doors, I heard a professor speaking in a way I'd never had before. This person was energetic, interesting, animated, and I wanted to listen and understand what he was so passionate about. That quarter, I ended up going early every day. Well, every day I went to class anyway, to listen to what Michael Lyons had to say in Poli-Sci 110. I officially took that class the next quarter, and it was then that I became a convert to Poli-Sci, in large part because of the type of professor Mike Lyons was. Mike was the most influential professor I had in my time at Utah State. In addition to being a great lecturer, he made me feel like he cared and was committed to my well-being in life, which is a big deal to someone making life choices in their 20s. Not only did I graduate with a degree in political science, it became my career. I've had the honor of serving in our legislature and of owning my own lobbying firm for, let's just say, decades now. Over the years, Mike and I kept in touch. We have what we would sportingly call academic versus reality conversations about politics that were always interesting and informative. He continued to make me a better advocate throughout my life. From one old student, thank you, Mike. You made a difference in my life, and because of you, I hope I've made a difference. And what every former student knows, what happens in SimCong stays in SimCong.
Hi, I'm Erin Coddlehunt. I'm a professor of economics at Reed College in Portland and wanted to briefly share some remembrances of Dr. Lyons. I met Dr. Lyons in 2004 as a freshman when I took his Intro to U.S. Government class, and I loved it so much I switched majors to political science, in part so I could take more classes from him. I didn't realize that you can just study something that's fun, like all the time. And part of what was such a joy of being Dr. Lyons' student was that he just truly loved what he was doing, and you could tell he was having so much fun in class. Since his passing, I've reflected on the ways in which he had a really big impact in my life, and it's really hard to convey in words, but I think the biggest thing he did for me was he believed that I would do something, that I would, like achieve something. And of course that maybe seems obvious now, but as a freshman, it was so refreshing to have someone just unequivocally believe that I would do something, even if that something was not well defined. But there were no caveats. There was no, oh, you'll do something if you don't get married, or you'll do something before you have kids. There was just this belief that, well, of course you'll do something. You're smart and you're capable, and you're going to do something great with your life. And that belief in me came at a time when I really needed that belief, and fostered me and helped me grow to be the adult that I am today. Dr. Lyons was my advisor for my master's thesis, and is part of the reason I continued in graduate school and became a professor. I wanted to be a professor in part because I saw how much he loved his job, and I am super lucky to have the same job, or a very similar job, where I get to spend time with students studying something that I love. And I want to briefly share one piece of advice that Dr. Lyons gave me that I still use to this day. He said you should judge a restaurant by the quality of their Caesar salad dressing. And Caesar salad is one of my favorite foods. It's something I eat all the time, and I think of him every time I order a Caesar salad, and I do judge the kitchen a little bit based on how good their dressing is. I'm so grateful to have had Dr. Lyons in my life. I really can't overstate what a positive impact he was on me. He introduced me to my best friend, who is still my best friend today, 20 years later, and I will forever be grateful for the time I had him in my life.
My name is Karen Beck Dudley. Besides myself, there are two other members of my family who were influenced by Mike's superior teaching. Mark Dudley, my brother-in-law, was a journalism major in the late 1980s and took Mike's intro class as well as Simulated Congress, which we called SimConc. He shared a great story with me. He said my best memory of him was after his first test in Poli-Sci 110. I received a very low grade. Not an F, but low. I went to his office that day and he helped me. He brought it up to the entire class's attention that I was one of the 2 students to see him that day. Then after the second test, my grade improved. There were only a couple of us that improved that much. He was one of a small group of professors that really took the time and cared for his students. He had a huge impact on me personally and on my education. His influence helped me through my entire adult life. Gary Beck, my brother, was also a poli-sci major in the early 1980s. He said, Mike was a great professor, great lectures, great sense of humor. It made you want to participate in government. He had a way of making everybody think that they were his favorite student, and maybe they were. And then he goes on, I missed a lot of classes in college, but never his. And then myself. I was an undergraduate at USU, and I was also a poli-sci major, graduating in the winter quarter 1980. Mike was a brand new faculty member. I took his SimConc class as well, in either 1978 or 79, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was his first iteration. It made a huge difference in my life. It was so engaging, but so time-consuming. We lived, slept, studied, and partied around SimConc. I almost went into government service because of that class, but instead I went to law school, and in 1985 returned to USU as a faculty member of the business school. Mike and I reconnected and became colleagues and friends. Mike was a well-respected faculty member and was always a staunch advocate for excellent teaching. He put the students and their well-being first. On a personal level, our children grew up together. Michael was in the class right below Carolyn. Stacia and Emily were the same age and in the same class. Stacia spent a lot, and I mean a lot, of time at both Mike and Jan's houses. He was a wonderful parent, great cook, and really fun conversationalist. He also made a mean margarita. He not only positively influenced thousands of students, think about that, thousands of students, but he was also a major positive influence on Carolyn and Emily's friends. Thank you, Mike, for helping raise my children. His bright light will definitely be missed, but his legacy lives on.
Unfortunately, our next speaker, Peter Calderisi, is unable to be here with us today in person. Hi, Peter. But he sent this video tribute.
Hi, Michael. This is, as you know, Peter. I know I'm talking to Michael in the present tense because I still feel that. I really wanted to be there with your family today. You cannot believe how much I wanted to be there. My mind and my soul certainly would make it. My body's not being very cooperative, so please accept my apologies. I was going to, mourn your passing, and then I decided, I heard something on TV recently. It was a paraphrase on a sports show. I believe was from Dr. Seuss, of all things. And to paraphrase it in this light, I would like to say, we should not cry because you're no longer with us. We should smile and celebrate and rejoice because you were. You led a full life. Everything you did was with love and passion, from loving your family, especially your granddaughter, Margot. The pride I heard oozing from your voice when you talked about her first steps was just incredible and heartwarming. Your cooking, your fishing, everything you did, your teaching was done with passion, was done with great care. I remember one of the last things you told me was your biggest regret was that you were leaving behind people you loved. And you said that included me. Right back at you. Anyway, to celebrate your life, I want to say this. If there is a heaven, if there is a heaven, I see you there. In your waders, in a cool mountain stream, on a beautiful, gorgeous blue sky day, with a picture of your beloved Margot in your vest pocket, casting your line. And right behind you, I noticed St. Peter is walking down the hill. And he said, I'm here for you to teach me how to fish correctly, which, knowing you, was something you probably would have said. And all of a sudden I noticed you give this shocked look. And this is only an inside joke for me and Michael. That you said, Peter, you're wearing sandals. Or as you would say it, and people would recognize his voice, Peter, really? Again, an inside joke. Anyway, I'm going to miss hearing Michael say, Peter, really? Or cocking his head when I would say something he disagreed with but didn't want to tell me I was wrong. I'm going to miss that, Michael. I still pick up the phone every couple of hours to call you because I read something of political significance or humor or saw an amazing sports play and then realizing that you were not going to be answering. It's going to be tough. Holly and I love you. We're going to miss you. Calderisi out.
And now for Mike's favorite older daughter, Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today. I'm just incredibly overwhelmed and touched by the outpouring of condolences and appreciation and love for my dad. When you grow up with Dr. Michael Lyons, you get used to people stopping and telling you what an impact he's made on their lives, and I think today is something that we can see that reflected. Thinking back on my childhood, I have been reflecting on some of the more routine things that we did together. Him teaching me how to cook, watching him fish from the car, and running errands, particularly going to the grocery store. And I did come across this gem of us at the grocery store. As many of you may know, he was an Albertsons guy. He did pivot to Macy's later on when Albertsons left, but he probably went to Albertsons, I'm not exaggerating, 6 out of 7 days of the week, sometimes twice a day, just to pick something up. He didn't like to plan ahead with cooking. He liked to be spontaneous. He liked to get out of the house. And something I vividly remember happening more than a couple of times, checking out at Albertsons, which if you remember, as I was thinking about this, they had those round conveyor belts. Like, if you know, you know. And the bagger or the checker would be a former or current student, and they would say, hey, Professor Lyons, I loved your class. Or, hi, Dr. Lyons, I wanted to tell you what a big impact you made in my life. And I just don't think that that's something that I appreciated at the time. So as I'm reflecting more on our recent relationship, the most significant event has been the birth of my daughter. For those of you who are parents, you may relate to the experience that when you become a parent yourself, you have an entirely new perspective on your own parents and the way that you were raised and the challenges that they faced, and just generally more respect for how difficult it is. My daughter joined us in September 2024. She is not here with us at this moment. You're welcome if you've been around a 19-month-old. She will join us later at the memorial. My dad was pretty invested in what we named my daughter. He cared a lot about her having a respectable name, but in his Michael Lyons way, he wouldn't necessarily tell you that outright. He would just make sure that you subtly understood what his expectations were. So we named her Margaret, and he did give us approval. That's an excellent name, classic, very respectable. We all call her Margot, but he maintained Margaret. So, hi, Margaret, and she'd say, hi, Papa. So if you did not know, my dad loved Christmas. Emily briefly mentioned this, but I have to believe that that originated in his childhood. He grew up Catholic, which he was conflicted about, but what I've heard is that his family would always decorate their Christmas tree on Christmas Eve. And the primary decorative feature of a classic Lyons family Christmas tree is, everybody knows it, tinsel. I mean, you've got to respect the amount of tinsel on that tree. So I was going through the archives and I found some wonderful Christmas photos, including his three younger sisters, which Emily mentioned, but I just want to call out that all three of them are here. So Linda, Amy, and Lois, as well as my cousin Jennifer and her daughter Lily as well. So these really kind of take you back. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Probably my favorite though, let's take it back. 1977, the groovy 70s. You all look incredible. He loved gift giving. I think he really just enjoyed thinking about things that other people would like. So months before birthday or Christmas, you'd be on the phone and he'd say, so hypothetically, if you had to pick a color, would you pick blue or red? And you're like, what is the context? Like, I have no idea. And basically, he just kind of sort of wanted to get some input to make sure he was on the right track, but he didn't want to give you too many hints. And he really got a lot of joy out of nailing the gift and also the anticipation leading up to it. So he would do things like put all the presents under the Christmas tree without any labels, which led to multiple Christmases where we didn't know what presents belonged to who. So we'd be doing things like, he'd be like, shake it, is it heavy, does it rattle, I think it might be this. So he came up with some systems. This was probably the best system he came up with, where everybody got their own wrapping paper. So they still didn't have labels on them, but each pile was in a different wrapping paper, and on Christmas morning, that would be revealed. And he wrapped everything. So I guarantee you in one of these boxes is just a piece of paper or a pair of socks with a brick in it to just throw you off until the very last moment what it's going to be. We did all get to celebrate this last Christmas together at my home in Salt Lake City, which was a big departure from us coming up to Logan. He and I had a long conversation about it when I told him that we wanted to host, and he was surprisingly emotional. And he said that it was a big life event when you shift away from being at your parents' house and hosting at your own. And he knew it was an inevitable milestone, but it still made him sad. We had some great presents. So to give you an example of a classic Michael Lyons present, my husband Dennis loves to pepper his food. He likes to just go for it. As a fellow cook, it kind of drives me crazy because he pre-peppers his food. So it comes out, we're going for pepper. But my dad knew that. And for Christmas this year, he gifted Dennis with 4 different kinds of pepper from all around the world, each in a separate package, mind you. So this was 4 different presents. And so we've got Cambodian, Spanish green peppercorns from Madagascar and from the United States. And the idea was that we could all do a pepper taste test and really figure out which profile of pepper Dennis likes the best, which is so typically Michael Lyons. That is a very typical gift. He also gave my daughter, Margaret, 2 books about space and astronomy. One was geared towards a 3 to 5-year-old set, and the other is this book, which is called The Stars. And I see all the sisters nodding. The Stars, A New Way to See Them, which was originally published in 1952. And to close today, I want to read the inscription that he wrote on the inside. And I don't think I can do this without crying, so I'm so sorry. Okay, Margaret. Just to get your heartstrings going. Margaret, this was a 2025 Christmas present from me to you. Obviously, it is not suitable for a 15-month-old, but I wanted to be certain that you received it and could read it while you were still young. It was the most important book of my entire childhood, and it led me to consider astronomy seriously as a career. In my view, all the answers to the profound mysteries of human existence reside out there, among or beyond the stars and galaxies. I hope this present leads you to contemplate those mysteries in meaningful ways. I also hope that the beauty of stars viewed on a dark, moonless night in a remote spot dazzles you and brings you joy. Love, Michael Lyons.
this is the time that it would be appropriate to raise a glass and propose a toast. So we'll adjourn to the Alumni House and do that. Chair time. Thank you so much.